Hi students, wish you all a happy Easter and happy Vishu, belated one. Today's class is sampling. When you hear this term sampling, always a picture will come to your mind, even if it is statistics or if it is general, that it represents a population or it represents a big portion. From that we have selected a small one. That is what the sampling immediately the term comes to your mind. So sample means a representative part of the population. Sampling means the process we are selecting the sample from that population. There is difference between sample and sampling. Now, when we always talk about population, before going to the actual class, we will have one example. Through that, I will explain this sampling technique. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for you to understand. So again, we are dealing with COVID case here. So we will consider that we are doing one study to know the recovery of COVID patients in Kerala. But it's very difficult for us to go throughout Kerala, all the districts, and then to consult the DMOs and all. It's very difficult for us. So what we will do, we will select some districts, maybe most affected districts like Pathanamthitta, Tirunelveli, Kasaragod and all. We will select, say, 3 districts we will select. So what is Kerala? In our sampling technique, Kerala is what we call as target population. Then we want to study the recovery of COVID patients throughout Kerala. So Kerala is what we call as what? Target population. But it is very difficult for us to go throughout Kerala. So we selected 3 districts in Kerala. So Trivandrum, Kasaragod and Pathanamthitta districts are selected. So that is what we call as study population. Now from these districts, again we cannot select all the patients of that districts. We will select a sample of these patients from each of that districts. It is better explained in the next picture. So this is what the first, where Kerala stands here, in the first row, that means the theoretical population. That is what we are having Kerala as, that recovery of all COVID patients in Kerala. Now, which is our study population? The 3 districts, the patients in 3 districts are our study population. Which are the 3 districts? Kasaragod, Pathanamthitta and Tirunelveli. Now, what do you mean by sampling frame? We want to prepare the list of all COVID patients that is admitted in hospitals, in various hospitals in these 3 districts. That is what we call as sampling frame. We want to get the list of all patients that is there in these 3 districts. Now, from that list is what we call as sampling frame. From that list, we will select the required number of samples which we need for our particular study. So this is the flow of any sampling technique. We will have one target population. From that we will select our accessible population, or we call it as study population. And from that study population we will prepare the list of all subjects which we need to have. From that subjects, or which satisfies our criteria, and from that subjects we will select the sample. Again, it is better explained in this picture. That means we will have one population. From that we will construct one sampling frame using some sampling processes. We will select one sample here in that small circle, and we will find what data we need, or we will find what variable we want to study. We will do our study in that sample. And then what we will do, once the result of that sample is known for us, we will go back to the target population. We will tell that, and that process is what we call as inference. That means we will mention that the result, whatever result we are getting in the sample, will be same as that of the population by using some statistical techniques. That is what we are studying in inferential statistics. So we will, based on that result which we obtain from the sample, we will infer about the target population. This is the process as such in a sampling technique. There are 2 types of sampling technique. The first is what we call as probability sampling, and the second is what we call as non-probability sampling. Probability sampling means if you are say in the class 50 students are there in the class, each one of you is having an equal chance of being selected. That means all you 50, I can select the first person. Say the first person is Alia in your class. So the first person selected, the second person selected. But what is the probability of selecting first person from 50 or one person from 50? 1 divided by 50. Understood? So the next person will be selected again. The probability is 1 divided by 50. So the probability sampling is each and every unit of the population is having an equal chance of selection. We are assigning a particular probability for the units in the sampling frame or in the population. That process is what we call as, or that type of sampling technique is what we call as probability sampling. It's always advisable to select probability sampling if we want to generalize the result of our sample to that of the population. Now, what do you mean by so 3 types of probability sampling techniques are there. The first one is what we call as simple random sample. Second is what we call as systematic sampling. Third one is what is stratified random sampling. Non-probability sampling means we are not assigning a particular probability for each unit. As and when if we are in a need of selecting sample, we will select a sample. Like convenient method. Since I know the names of some students in your class, according to my convenience, I will select the sample. According to the convenience of the investigator, if I am selecting the sample. That type of sampling technique is what we call as non-probability sampling. There is no any hard and fast rule that we will select only this particular type. No, it's not like that. There is no random technique that is applying for non-probability sampling. That is why this non-probability sampling is less advisable or less effective when we compare probability sampling. Probability sampling is better than non-probability sampling. So this is what the simple random sampling technique is. First and foremost is that the simple random sampling technique is applied only if the population is homogeneous. What do you mean by homogeneous? Belongs to the same group. You all are homogeneous in the sense that you are all medical students and of 2017 batch. But you are heterogeneous where you belongs to the population or the subjects of 2 genders, males and females are there. In that way you are heterogeneous. Understood? With the concept of homogeneous. So the population should be homogeneous in order to apply simple random sample. The whole list of the population should be known. The sampling frame, all units of the sampling frame should be known for selecting simple random sample. Then we will apply lottery method or random number table method for using simple random sampling technique. That is why the simple random sampling technique is applied only in experimental studies. In field surveys and all, we won't apply simple random sampling. The next sampling technique is what we call as systematic sampling or systematic random sampling. What do you mean by systematic random sampling? Systematic random sampling, for applying that, first we should know the size of the population. What is the population size? That we should know. Then we need to know the sample size. If the size of the population and the sample size is known, then we will calculate one value called K, which is equal to population size divided by sample size. Once the K is known, then how will we select the first unit into the sample? The first unit will be selected by the number will be selected between 1 and K. K is what? K is the population size divided by sample size. So, for example, if K obtained, population size is 100 and the sample size is say 10. So, what is the sampling interval there? 100 divided by 10. So, that means 10. K is equal to 10 there. So, the first unit selected will be between 1 and 10. So, if your batch itself is our population, so we want to select 10 students from your class or maybe from your batch, then we will select the numbers between 1 and K. K is what? The first unit is selected between 1 and K, so that means 1 and 10. How we will select? By applying simple random sampling technique. Either by lottery method or random number table method, we will select the first unit. So the lot selected is say, the first unit selected is say 8. 8th person is selected into the sample as the first unit. Who will be the next unit selected? 8 plus 10. Why 10? 10 is the sampling interval, K. Understood? So 8 plus 10, 18th unit is selected into the sample. 28th unit, every 10th unit will be selected into the sample. So this is how the systematic sampling technique works. And one of the main drawback of the systematic sampling technique is that only the first unit selected is random in systematic random sampling technique. Afterwards, every particular person or particular individual at that point it will be selected into the sample. So at that fixed interval will be selected into the sample. So that is the main drawback of systematic sampling. The next sampling technique is what we call as stratified random sampling technique, which is applied for a population which is heterogeneous. So before in stratified random sampling, we want to divide the population into homogeneous subgroups because the population is heterogeneous. If we want to do a study to find how this COVID patients is affecting based on gender, is it is affecting more in males and more in females or more in females. So we will divide the population based on their gender. All the males will be in one group and all the females will be in another group. Like that we will divide them into homogeneous subgroups. And then afterwards what we will do, we will select the sample from each group. From males we will select our required number of sample, and from females we will select the required number of samples. How we will select from each homogeneous groups, and this homogeneous group is what we call a strata. That is why it is named so as stratified. So each homogeneous groups which we are dividing is what we call as strata. And from each strata we will select the sample. Remember, we have not selected the sample yet. From each strata we will select the sample by applying either simple random sampling technique or systematic random sampling technique. So, and in stratified random sampling technique, you should make a note there that within strata the heterogeneity or the variation within the strata should be as minimum as possible, and between strata the variation should be as maximum as possible. Then non-random sampling technique, as we were mentioning there, non-probability sampling. Any sampling method where some elements of the population have no chance of selection. We are not assigning a particular probability there. There is no any particular definition of selecting an individual from the population. As and when we will select the population or we will select the sample. So hence, because of the selection of the elements is non-random, non-probability sampling not allows the estimation of sampling error. There are three types of non-probability sampling which you want to study. The first is what we call as convenience sampling, according to the convenience of the investigator, according to the convenience of the researcher if he is selecting a sample. That is what we call as convenience sampling. There is no any scientific technique. So that is why we are telling that generalization of about the population from this sample is not allowed in case of this if we are selecting convenience sampling. Quota sampling means it determines what population is like according to specific qualities. Then determine the quotas for each quality and then select people to fulfill each quota. So for example, we are assigning that we need only males, we need only females. So that particular part is fixed, then we will select the sample. Judgment sampling or purposive sampling means the researcher chooses a sample based on who they think would be appropriate for the study. If we want to do some study in COVID or the recovery of COVID patients like that, then we need to interview some doctors or nurses who we think is appropriate for the study. So that type of study technique is what we call as purposive sampling. So these are the sampling techniques which you need to go through at present. So this is what the sampling part is. Thank you.